Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I'm your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. We're doing this by Zoom video, and I'm asking everyone to like it, to share it, and also go to not only the webpage for Gracefully Graying, which is gracefullygraying.com, but also to the YouTube channel for the Henry Gornbein YouTube channel. Today, I'm pleased to welcome as my guest, Oakland County Chief Judge for Probate, Linda Hallmark, as we discuss really what is happening in the probate court as we are under the stay-at-home order with regard to the coronavirus. Judge Hallmark, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
Thank you, Henry. I have to correct you already. I am the Chief Judge Pro Tem of the Probate Court, which means I have a big title, but our actual Chief Judge is Judge Ryan.
You're a wonderful judge, and I've known you for many, many years. And first of all, let's talk about the normal functions of the probate court. And first of all, you do estates of decedents. And what's the typical procedure there?
Yes. People, when they think of probate court, often think about decedents' estates, which means either an estate or a trust matter for someone who has passed away, and how their heirs obtain assets post-death. So, it's a simple filing process. There are different ways you can file for a decedent's estate. You can have an independent probate, which means basically the court pretty much stays out of it. You can have a supervised estate, which means the court will intervene and make decisions. The probate code allows people to kind of come in and out of those systems. So there are various ways people can file. It really is dependent on your own circumstances, the size of the estate. Sometimes it's dictated by how everyone gets along. All of those kinds of things can be factors, and we always suggest to people to get some legal help, at least initially, just to sort of see where you should go and how you should proceed.
Judge Hallmark, another area is guardianships and conservatorships. Give us a little rundown of those.
All right. Well, we handle both adult and minor guardianships and conservatorships. Pretty self-explanatory. Adults are people over the age of 18. And also, if a minor is in need of a guardian, they can come to the probate court, and a grandparent, aunt, uncle, someone who's interested in the child's welfare can also come in and ask us to establish a guardianship. Conservatorship is just handling the financial side. So if someone's incapacitated for reasons of mental illness, age and infirmity, physical illness, any of those kinds of things, they may come into court and ask for authority to handle financial issues. And even in a minor case, if the minor is coming into money from a lawsuit or from an inheritance, something along those lines, it might be appropriate to have a conservator.
Judge Hallmark, there's also a mental health docket. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, the mental health docket primarily is involved with persons who are hospitalized and have not consented to remain in the hospital. They're objecting for whatever reason to hospitalization. The hospital can come in and petition the court and ask to retain the person so that they can get appropriate treatment. So that's one form of the mental health docket. Also, we authorize in certain situations police to transport someone who might need an evaluation. So if you're a family member or a friend and you know someone who is deteriorating because of mental illness, they're not taking their medication, perhaps they're not taking care of themselves, or they pose a danger to someone else, they can this friend or family member could approach the court and ask us to have the person transported to common ground and be evaluated to see if they need mental health treatment. So that's another aspect of our mental health docket.
Are there any other areas of the probate court that we haven't covered yet?
Those are primarily the issues that we have in probate. In the traditional probate, now I should indicate too that In various courts, it differs. I mean, Oakland County, we're a pretty traditional probate court in that we handle just matters that fall under the probate code. Other courts, there's a combined docket, so the judges may be handling family division matters, which fall under the circuit court, as well as probate matters. So you need to know which court you're going to and how that court operates.
Now, you had a regular schedule with Wednesdays were motion days. There are other days set for hearings, and now we're under stay-at-home orders. I'm at home. I believe you're at home.
Yes.
We have definitely been heavily impacted by the coronavirus. Tell us what is happening in the probate court now with regard to the stay-at-home orders.
Yes. Well, I don't want to be trite, but it's a brave new world for all of us. And we've had to adapt to a lot of things, as everyone has, in a very quick manner. And for instance, I've learned Zoom technology, which I had no idea about before this all started. And I think many of us are in that category of having had to learn some new technologies that we weren't familiar with before. So I can't really speak for all of the judges. I can tell you what I'm doing in my particular court. And it's probably similar for many of the judges. The Supreme Court has issued an order related to all of these coronavirus issues. And I believe that is posted on our website. And the Supreme Court order is 2020-6. And it kind of outlines what types of matters the courts should be handling during this time. The courts, of course, are an essential government function, so we need to stay open. But we're also cognizant that we have a lot of public coming into our buildings, and we want to keep both the public and our staff safe during this time. So we have set up procedures so that for the staff people, all of them are working, but they rotate between working in the building and at home. And again, many of our staff have been able to set up computers and other ways to function so that they can be home and still doing their work. And then on a rotating basis, they come to court. So in my office, for instance, I think all of the probate judges have this procedure. We have one person in the chambers itself, and then our counter staff, where they accept filings and payments and those kinds of things, they are rotating. So we always have one person in chambers to answer phones, answer calls, set up our technology hearings. And hopefully we're keeping the court open in that fashion. Some of the judges come in physically and some do not. So right now I am at home. But some of the judges do opt to come to court and handle their matters there. So it really is dependent on the judge, and best procedure if you have questions is to call that judge's chambers and find out how they're proceeding.
What about motion day? Does that happen now, or what's happening on Wednesdays?
It is happening. I'm doing my motion call. Our motion calls in Oakland County are on Wednesdays. The difficulty with the technology, I am able to conduct hearings by Zoom, but we are pretty much just handling matters that are uncontested or have settled. So we do have a motion call. For instance, some of the examples of uncontested matters that come in, if you are a conservator or a guardian, you might be compelled to file an annual accounting so that we know where the funds of the ward have been spent over the year, what the income and expenses are. Those may not be contested matters. Often people can bring those in and there's no controversy about it, and they can be approved by the court. So things like that, the appointment of a guardian may be something that's not a contested matter. So those kinds of matters we can handle. We do those on Wednesday mornings primarily. And, our docket is down from our normal docket, but we are handling those matters. If there are contested matters, those are much more difficult to do via the technology. So they can come into court, and what we're doing with those is we're trying to establish scheduling orders so that during this downtime, The parties can be exchanging discovery, for instance. They might be sent to a mediator or an arbitrator to try and resolve their case. So they can still be proceeding with the case, but we are not conducting contested trials as of this point.
Judge Hallmark, what about the mental health docket? Because often those are matters that have to be dealt with on a very quick basis.
Yeah, those are time sensitive, Henry. So every Monday and Thursday we conduct mental health hearings, and we are doing those remotely as well. We have 4 probate judges in Oakland County. So each of us has 1 week per month that we handle mental health docket, and we do it on the Monday and Thursday of that particular week. So we have been doing Zoom hearings. Some of the hospitals don't have Zoom capacity, so we might have a patient who's calling in while the attorneys and the judge are on via Zoom. So it's a sort of a hybrid in those cases. But we are conducting our normal mental health docket. We're also handling all emergency matters. People who might need an emergency guardian, for instance, can come in, or if they need transport for mental health treatment, we're handling all of those matters as well. I have had, just in the last couple of days, a number of cases related to COVID-19 where someone is very ill, perhaps on a ventilator, and they need to have a guardian appointed to make medical decisions. So those have been coming in fairly regularly for the probate court.
So you're seeing the tragic side of it right now.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what's interesting, I'm sure after this is, once the stay is lifted, you're going to see a lot more estates too, because I've noticed the number of obituary seems to be substantially higher than normal. You know, the older you start reading the obituary notices and something.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think probate will be very busy for a while. We'll have an uptick, I'm sure, in estates. And the other thing that I haven't heard too much about in the media, but just my own observation of some of the cases I'm seeing, even persons who are able to get off the ventilators and who are recovering don't have necessarily all of their capacity. In other words, they may still be very ill physically. There may be people who have issues with respect to brain function if they've been deprived of oxygen for some period of time. So they may not be deceased, but there may be some other medical consequences which require guardianship or conservatorship for those folks.
It's sad. I mean, one thing I've been seeing on the news and reading is the fact that once you're on the ventilator, it's like almost as if your odds for full recovery are decreased. And many people on the ventilator, it's like the last step before passing away. So it's really a tragic situation.
It's a very tragic situation. Of course, all of us are just heartsick at watching this unfold, and hopeful that I think the great minds of the world are working on cures, and hopefully that will happen for us.
Hopefully sooner than later. What about
Yes.
the probate estates, Your Honor?
I'm sorry.
The actual probating of estates, is that going through, or some of that just stalled
Oh,
for now?
Again, very often those are really not contested matters. So if someone comes in and files an estate, we certainly take the filing, and we might want to appoint a personal representative, set a bond on the estate, determine who the heirs of the decedent are. We can do all of those kinds of things. And again, that's an example of something that probably would come to us on a Wednesday motion call. So we are taking in cases and hearing those, yes.
Now, are people on the motion call, are they appearing in court, or is everything being done basically by phone or by Zoom or other electronic means?
Yeah, pretty much everything is now being handled via Zoom or telephone. Although, again, yesterday, for instance, I had an emergency matter come in. The petitioning party was at the courthouse. My clerk was in the courtroom. I appeared on Zoom, and we conducted the hearing in that fashion. So it really just depends. I should indicate that we are accepting petitions now by fax, which we didn't do before. Filing fees are being waived during this crisis time pursuant to the Supreme Court's directive. So it's a little easier for people to file the cases. They don't necessarily have to come into the building.
I'm curious, what about e-signatures? Are those being accepted now?
Yeah, we're not only accepting e-signatures on certain things, but we're also able to sign orders sometimes electronically. So again, some of those policies, it's really best to check with the judges' chambers. And I should indicate too, if I didn't already say this, that the Oakland County Circuit and probate courts have websites. Both of those will give you some direction on matters that are being handled, how the court is accepting filings, and the various judges have the opportunity to put their protocols on as well. So that's a very good resource for people as a starting point. Take a look at the website for both the circuit and the probate courts.
Now, are any trials or hearings being done remotely, or basically they're just being put over for now?
Well, again, if it's a fairly straightforward, simple hearing, we can do those. We're not really taking in at this point any difficult or contested cases. The logistics of that is just difficult. You know, if we're going to have witnesses appearing, it's very hard to do that via the Zoom system. And in probate in particular, we can have numerous parties and numerous attorneys, numerous witnesses. So that gets to be a little too complicated to do via Zoom. And again, we want to keep the traffic in the building down as much as possible. So we're trying not to go to the building and not to have a lot of public coming in.
Do you have any idea as to timeline? I mean, I guess no one knows for sure, but everyone's saying May 1st, and I don't think that's realistic at all now. As we're doing this, it's April 16th, and before we know it, it'll be May. And here in Michigan, we're being hit very, very heavily. It's still one of the hotbeds as far as the most cases and one of the highest death rates.
Yeah, and I don't have any specific insight about how long it will be. My sense, like yours, it's May 1st is a very hopeful date, but I don't think it's a realistic one. And when we do begin to reopen, I think it will be a slow process. So very likely people will need to wear masks. We probably will have to limit the numbers of people that can come into the court, into the courtrooms. There was some discussion about whether you need to have your temperature taken, for instance, as you enter the building. So I think those kinds of measures will be put into place, and that will probably be a fairly long-term kind of situation. I was hearing on the news today that it may be a situation this summer where we're not able to go to the beach, attend concerts, large gatherings, all of those things will still be prohibited. So even after we're open, it's going to be a bit of a different world.
I think there's going to be a new normal, a new world. I mean, I'm hearing all kinds of things like this could linger on or can even come back in 2021. I mean, it's really, I've never seen anything like this. It's like not only do we have this horrible pandemic, but we also have the economy in horrible shape. So it's really almost unbelievable. It's like sometimes I think I'm walking around and I'm going to wake up and this can't be real, but it is. It's terrifying.
Yes.
What about the new normal? Do you see, once you start getting back into operation, using a lot of the techniques that you've been using now as far as more telephone conferences, more perhaps pre-trials by phone or by Zoom, do you see some of that being incorporated into the norm going forward?
Yeah, I think, there will have to be an analysis of how effective all of that has been. But I've been pleased with how efficiently that works, and not to credit myself, but to credit my staff for how smoothly they have made the transition. And not only my personal staff, but also our court staff, our court administrators, the people at the state level. our Supreme Court, all of those folks have been working very hard on these. And we'll be taking a hard look at what's effective, what's not effective. Again, I don't see us doing trials or contested hearings necessarily outside of the courtroom, but for something like a pretrial, again, perhaps an uncontested case where it's going to be a 2-minute presentation, we might look more closely at doing some of those things remotely.
Wouldn't some of that really be less of a burden? I mean, the fact that you can do a lot of these things from your chambers, as far as perhaps some of the status conferences and things like that, where people can be calling in. So wouldn't that be a more efficient use of time, perhaps going forward?
Yeah, as I said, for the matters that aren't contested or are just kind of procedural, setting dates and those kinds of things, this could be a really useful tool. Often, though, if it's a contested matter, of course, we want people to come to court because it gives them an opportunity to see the proceedings, and it's a lot different observing body language and those kinds of things when people
Right.
are present together. It also gives people an opportunity to communicate. Sometimes when we set a pretrial, it's the first time the parties have really been together to discuss the case. So there's an opportunity there for them to find some common ground. And so I'm sure we'll still encourage that to happen.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a new world we're going through, and I think we're all learning to navigate it. And it's a situation, especially in the probate area. I mean, I see you're going to have a large influx of estates of decedents. As you're saying, you're going to have a large influx with regard to guardianships and conservatorships, especially with people who are not fully recovering, or where there are a lot of problems coming up. So you may be going through a slight hiatus, but I think in the coming months things are probably going to be busier than ever.
Yeah, and we're bracing for all of that. We understand that our dockets are probably going to increase. For a long time, we've been watching the demographics in Michigan, and even without the pandemic, it looked to us like we were going to have greater and greater numbers coming in. Michigan's population is aging. We have a lot of the baby boomers who haven't gotten to the point yet, thankfully, of needing some assistance. But, all of those kinds of numbers we are looking at. This pandemic, of course, will exacerbate all of those kinds of issues. So, again, we're bracing for what could happen. The other aspect of this is, and again, we haven't really tracked it yet, but, I think the governor, the president have alluded to this. As this goes on for a longer period of time, there can be mental health implications for people. So we might see more minor guardianships, for instance, if the parents are out of work and they're depressed and not able to function very well. So all of those kinds of social issues ultimately will probably come our way in some form.
That's a good point. I mean, we're isolated. There's more depression. There's more, it's attached. It's like we're human beings. We like contact. We like physical contact. And that's been taken away from us. And it's like, sure, you're with your immediate family, but as far as seeing whether it's grandchildren or relatives, nothing, can't do it right now.
Yeah, it really, as I said at the beginning, it's an unprecedented time. We feel very badly for, of course, all of the children who aren't able to go to school. As much as we all may have complained about going to school, that's a socialization and a learning that these kids are missing out on. And I think they'll all be okay. Hopefully, they're at home with good parents who are taking good care of them. But at the same time, that's going to be a hole in their lives that they'll never get back. And it's heartbreaking to me that we have to let our young people experience those kinds of things.
Well, as you said at the beginning, and it's not trite, it is a brave new world, and it's just unprecedented. What I'd like you to do, we're down to a couple of minutes now, is share some of your thoughts with our viewers, especially aimed at not only attorneys who will be watching this, but also the lay audience, as far as the probate system and what you see and how. I know you make things as user-friendly as possible, and I don't know if things will be more or less user-friendly going forward, but what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I like to stay positive, and I am positive.
You are.
We have a wonderful court in Oakland County, and throughout the state. I have many colleagues around the state who are extremely innovative, intelligent, hardworking people, and so, from our perspective, we are going to recover. We'll recover well. We have people who are very dedicated. And again, we're going to be looking at some of these innovations to see what we can incorporate in the future. We will handle all of the matters that come our way. And again, it might be a little more of a delay than we would like or that we had in the past, but we will have the capacity to work through all of these things. Oakland County also we're very blessed with good leadership, with strong economics. So the long-term prediction is really positive. It's, I think, this short-term period of time that we're going to struggle with for a while. But again, I think we'll come up with some innovations that allow us to start moving forward before too long.
I think we're all going to be feeling our way, and it's a situation where it's not as if you're turning on a switch and everything's going to be back to normal. It's going to be a situation where I think it's almost as if you gotta crawl before you walk and walk before you run, and we're going to be going through a lot of stops and starts. So it's always a pleasure to have you as my guest. And one comment you made as far as our state aging, we are an aging state. Over 50% of the population in Michigan is 50 and over. So normally the probate court is always going to be busy. It's going to be even busier now because of the coronavirus, but it's something we're just going to have to adapt to. And you shared a lot of thoughts with us, and I think it's important. So, Judge Linda Hallmark, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying. And I want to thank all of our viewers for watching Gracefully Graying as we've done a Zoom edition. So I really appreciate your coming on, Judge Hallmark.
Thank you, Henry. And I pray that you will stay well, you and your family. And for your listeners as well, stay home, be safe, and hopefully we'll have a big celebration when this is done.
Sounds good. The same to you, Judge Hallmark.
Thank you.
Wish you stay well and stay safe. Thank you again.
All right. Take care.
You too.